My daughter-in-law shoved me off a yacht in the middle of the ocean to steal $3 billion. They thought I drowned, but when they returned, I was waiting for them. Stay with me as I take you through my story, and if it stirs something in you, remember to show your support with a like, a share, and by joining our little community. My name is Claire. I am in my late 60s, a widow, and the owner of a fortune I built with my husband, a fortune worth $3 billion. People often see me as a woman of elegance and sharpness, but deep inside I am simply a mother who wanted her family to be happy. After my husband passed away, I dedicated my life to raising my son Luke and protecting what we created. Luke is in his early 40s now. He is bright, ambitious, and kind-hearted, but sometimes too trusting for his own good. When he married Jennifer, I thought he had finally found someone who could give him the love and balance he needed. Jennifer was in her 30s, beautiful, polite, and sweet on the outside. She knew how to smile in a way that disarmed everyone. And me? I fell for it completely. From the very first day, I welcomed Jennifer into my life as the daughter I never had. I thought she would stand beside Luke and build a strong future with him. I wanted to believe she loved him for who he was, not for the fortune he was connected to. I opened my arms, my home, and my heart to her, and for a while, everything seemed perfect. But time has a way of showing true colors. I started noticing little things, subtle looks, quiet remarks, and the way she tried to create space between Luke and... Still, I pushed those doubts aside. Love has a way of blinding us, doesn't it? I told myself that Jennifer was just adjusting to family life, and that my son's happiness was worth overlooking small things. When my birthday came around, Luke insisted we celebrate in style. He wanted us all to be together, like old times, and Jennifer eagerly agreed. They planned a trip on my yacht, a luxury vessel that had carried so many of our family memories. The idea felt warm and special to me. A birthday on the sea, under the open sky, surrounded by the two people I loved most. It sounded perfect. I remember the evening we set sail. The air was gentle, the water calm, and everything felt like a dream. I dressed in one of my finest gowns, not to impress anyone, but because I loved the feeling of marking life's milestones with grace. Luke looked relaxed, proud to be hosting, while Jennifer moved around like the perfect hostess, smiling, laughing, and holding my hand as if we were truly close. That night, I let myself believe I was blessed. I thought my family was whole. I thought my daughter-in-law cared for me as much as I cared for her. I had no idea then that this trip, planned as a celebration, would turn into the darkest night of my life. It started with small things, almost too small to notice. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. Jennifer would roll her eyes when I spoke, but only when Luke wasn't looking. If I made a suggestion about dinner plans or the way we could spend the evening, she would smile sweetly in front of my son, but later sigh heavily, as if my words were nothing but a burden. She became skilled at slipping little daggers into her compliments, telling me how elegant I was for my age, or how I dressed surprisingly well for someone who should be slowing down. Her tone was always honeyed, but the sting underneath was impossible to ignore. The hardest part wasn't her subtle disrespect. It was how carefully she began pulling Luke away from me. Whenever I asked my son to sit with me for a quiet talk, Jennifer would suddenly remember something urgent she needed him for. She began filling his time with outings, errands, or long private conversations. It was as though she wanted to create a wall between us, brick by brick, until he no longer heard me the way he once did. One evening, I overheard them talking on the yacht's deck. Jennifer's voice was low but sharp, carrying across the gentle wave. She was urging Luke to take more control of the family money. "Your mother has had her time," she said. "She's old, Luke. She should be enjoying her retirement, not clinging to every decision. You need to step up. This empire will be yours one day. Why not start now?" My heart sank as I listened. Luke hesitated. I could hear it in his tone, but his love for her blinded him. He wanted peace, not conflict, and Jennifer knew exactly how to play on that weak. The following night, over dinner on the yacht, Jennifer finally crossed a line. We were seated under the warm glow of the lights, the sea stretching endlessly around us. The food was exquisite, the kind of meal that should have brought a family together. Instead, Jennifer smiled at me across the table, raised her glass, and said in a light, casual voice, "Sometimes old people don't realize when it's time to step aside. Power is hard to let go of, isn't it?" Her words cut deeper than she could have guessed, though perhaps that was her intention all along. Luke froze for a moment, glanced at me, and then quickly laughed it off, trying to smooth the tension. "Jennifer doesn't mean anything by it," he insisted, squeezing her hand. But the look in her eyes told me otherwise. I stayed silent, but inside me alarms were ringing. I began to see her clearly, not as the daughter I once wished for, but as a woman who wanted everything I had built. That night, lying awake in my cabin, I remembered a warning my lawyer once gave me. "Be careful who you trust with your legacy." Those words echoed in my mind, chilling and true. For the first time, I realized Jennifer wasn't just disrespectful. She was dangerous. The night of my birthday began beautifully. The yacht glided smoothly across the dark waves, the air warm with a gentle breeze carrying the faint scent of salt. The crew had arranged champagne and music on the upper deck. Strings of soft golden lights shimmered above us, making the evening feel like something out of a dream. Luke was cheerful, raising his glass to toast me. "To my mother," he said proudly, "the strongest woman I know." His smile warmed my heart, even though I could see Jennifer's eyes flicker with annoyance before she quickly covered it with a sweet grin. Jennifer leaned in close to me all night, acting as though we were inseparable. She poured me another glass of champagne, laughed at my stories, and even rested her hand gently on mine as if to say we were family, we were bonded. In front of Luke, she played her part perfectly, and for a while I let myself enjoy the illusion. Perhaps, I thought, I had been too hard on her. Maybe her earlier comments were just thoughtless slips. I wanted so badly to believe that my family could be whole. As the evening wound down, Luke excused himself to check something with the crew. That was when Jennifer turned to me, her face glowing under the starlight. "Claire," she said softly, "come with me for a moment. I want to share something with you. Just us." Her voice carried a warmth that sounded sincere, and though a part of me hesitated, I followed her. She led me toward the far side of the deck, away from the music and laughter. The sea stretched endlessly around us, black and bottomless. I turned to her, waiting for whatever moment she claimed to want to share. She leaned close, her lips brushing my ear as though she were about to whisper a secret. Instead, I felt the sudden force of her hands slam against me. The shock of it froze me for half a heartbeat. My body lurched forward, and then I was falling, the champagne glass slipping from my grip, shattering against the railing. The world spun, the stars above blurring into streaks of light, before the icy ocean swallowed me whole. The cold struck like knives against my skin, stealing my breath. I flailed, struggling to keep my head above water, salt burning my eyes and throat. And then, just before the waves closed over me, I heard her voice, low, calm, and full of triumph. "Goodbye, Claire." From the water, I looked up at the yacht's glowing deck. Through the blur of seawater and tears, I could see Luke inside. His figure bent slightly as he laughed with one of the crew members. He had no idea that his wife had just tried to erase me from his life forever. The waves pulled me further from the boat, the lights growing faint. My body trembled with shock, fear, and disbelief. The woman I had once welcomed as a daughter had just cast me into the ocean like I was nothing. And my own son, my beloved son, remained inside, completely unaware. The ocean was merciless. The moment I hit the water, it felt like every bone in my body had turned to ice. I gasped, choking on salt, thrashing as the waves crashed over me again and again. My hands flailed in the darkness until they found a splintered piece of wood drifting nearby, debris from the yacht's equipment. I clung to it desperately, my arms burning with effort, my lungs screaming for air. Every muscle begged me to give up, to sink and let the sea swallow me whole. But in that black void of water and sky, images of my life rushed into my mind like a film I couldn't stop watching. I saw Luke as a little boy, holding my hand at his father's funeral, his eyes wide and frightened, depending on me for everything. I remembered the sleepless nights I spent building the business from scraps, negotiating deals, swallowing my grief, and forcing myself to be strong when all I wanted was to collapse. I remembered the years of sacrifice, the empire my late husband and I had dreamed of, and how I had kept it alive for Luke. I could not let it end here. I would not let Jennifer steal everything. Not my life, not my son, not the legacy I had bled for. With each crashing wave, I repeated to myself, I cannot die. Not like this. Not tonight. Hours passed. My arms trembled, my body weak, but I refused to release the wood. The stars blurred above me, and the moon dipped low. Just when the fight inside me began to falter, I saw a faint light moving across the water. My heart leapt, though I feared it was only my imagination. But then voices cut through the roar of the sea, rough, urgent, real. A fishing boat drew near, its lanterns swaying in the dark. The men aboard spotted me, shouting to one another as they rushed to haul me in. Strong hands gripped my arms, lifting me out of the water and onto the deck. I collapsed, coughing, shivering violently, seawater pouring from my clothes. The fishermen stared at me in shock. One of them whispered my name, recognizing me instantly. I was not just a stranger pulled from the sea. I was Claire, the widow whose face often appeared in business magazines, the woman known for her wealth and empire. Their eyes were wide, waiting for answers. I held up a trembling hand. "Please," I whispered, my voice raw. "Don't contact my family. Not yet. Let them think I drowned." The men exchanged uncertain glances but nodded. They wrapped me in blankets, offered me water, and assured me I was safe. But I already knew safety was an illusion. As the boat carried me away from the place where Jennifer had tried to erase me, I made myself a promise. They would believe I was gone. They would mourn me, inherit what was mine, and show their true faces. And then, when the time was right, I would return. I would not come back as a victim. I would come back for justice. Back on shore, the news spread quickly. Reporters crowded the docks as Luke and Jennifer stepped off the yacht, their faces pale, their movements heavy with staged grief. Luke's eyes were swollen, red from real tears, but Jennifer's were dry, though she dabbed them with a silk handkerchief, playing her part perfectly. She clung to him, as though she were the grieving daughter-in-law, the one trying to hold the family together after tragedy. She slipped, Jennifer whispered to the police and to the cameras. We tried to save her, but the ocean took her. Her voice cracked at the right moments, her lips trembling as she leaned against Luke's shoulder. The world believed her act. The press printed headlines about the tragic drowning of billionaire widow Claire, and people sent flowers to the gates of my estate. To everyone, I was gone. But I wasn't gone. I was there, hidden in plain sight, watching from a safe distance with the help of a trusted friend. From the shadows, I saw my world slowly begin to change hands. Lawyers moved in swiftly, papers were signed, and the vast fortune I had protected for decades began transferring into Luke's name. And because Luke's name was tied to hers, Jennifer's grip tightened around everything that was once mine. At first, Jennifer maintained her mask of mourning. She wore black dresses, spoke softly, and gave interviews about how much she admired me. But the act didn't last long. Within weeks, cracks began to show. She couldn't resist the power she had finally snatched. I saw her parading through town in brand-new luxury cars, her arm heavy with diamonds that had once sat in my safe. The mansion I had lived in for decades, filled with memories of Luke's childhood, was stripped of its warmth. Jennifer hired decorators to tear apart the rooms, replacing the elegant, timeless furniture with cold, gaudy displays of wealth. Every corner screamed her name now, as though she was trying to erase all traces of me. Shopping sprees became her daily ritual. She walked into boutiques with photographers trailing behind her, carrying bags stacked high with designer clothes, her smile wide and smug. To the outside world, she was simply a woman coping with loss by indulging. But I knew better. She was celebrating. She thought she had won. And Luke, my sweet, foolish son, he was still blind. He followed her like a shadow, trusting her every word, thanking her for being his support during such a dark time. He couldn't see the way she smirked when his back was turned, the greed flashing in her eyes. He clung to her, believing she was his anchor, when in truth she was the storm tearing everything apart. From my hidden place, I watched it all unfold, each step of their charade feeding the fire inside me. Jennifer believed she had buried me in the sea, but she had no idea I was alive, watching her every move. And soon, very soon, she would learn that her celebration was only the beginning of her downfall. I stayed hidden in a quiet coastal town, far away from the prying eyes of the press and Jennifer's reach. My refuge came in the form of Margaret, an old friend who had once been my attorney before retiring. She welcomed me into her home without hesitation, no questions asked, just a firm embrace and the words, "We'll fix this, Claire." Her house was modest compared to my estate, but it was safe, and safety was what I needed most. Margaret wasted no time. The moment she heard what had happened, she set to work digging into the financial side of things. "If Jennifer is planning to take everything, she'll leave a trail," she told me, her sharp eyes scanning documents, her fingers moving quickly over her old laptop. Slowly, piece by piece, we began uncovering what I had long suspected. Hidden accounts, money being funneled into places that didn't belong to Luke, and movements that suggested Jennifer was preparing to transfer a huge portion of the estate out of the... It wasn't just greed, it was strategy. She wanted to move the fortune offshore, into accounts under her own name, where no one could touch it. Once that was done, Luke would be left with nothing but the scraps she allowed him to have. My son, blind to it all, would never know he had been stripped clean by the woman he trusted most. Margaret's legal knowledge became my greatest weapon. She pointed out an overlooked prenuptial clause in Jennifer and Luke's marriage agreement, one that could unravel Jennifer's hold if used correctly. "She doesn't know this exists," Margaret said with a small smile, "and that ignorance will be her undoing." But I knew legal papers alone wouldn't be enough. I needed allies inside the estate, people who had been loyal to me for years. Late one night, I reached out carefully, using a phone that couldn't be traced. First, I contacted Charles, my butler, who had served me faithfully for decades. His voice cracked when he realized it was me. "Madam, they said you were gone," he whispered. I knew something wasn't right. Next, I called Diane, my estate manager, a woman who knew the ins and outs of every property, every account, every routine. She too swore her loyalty instantly. Both Charles and Diane agreed to keep my survival a secret, no matter the risk. Together, they became my eyes and ears inside my own home. feeding me information about Jennifer's moves while keeping my presence hidden. With their help, I learned that Jennifer was accelerating her plan. She had already contacted banks overseas, preparing to shift large sums into her private accounts. The clock was ticking. I sat in Margaret's study, staring at the evidence spread before me. Jennifer thought she had secured her victory, but what she didn't know was that I was alive, gathering every weapon I needed. I would let her think she had won, let her celebrate her false triumph. And then, when she was most certain of her success, I would strike. With Margaret's help, the trap began to take shape. The first step was quiet but powerful. She drafted an update to my will and ensured certain financial transfers were frozen under the guise of routine legal review. To anyone on the outside, it looked like nothing more than slow paperwork and red tape, but inside, it was a carefully placed roadblock. The funds Jennifer was counting on began stalling, and her perfectly calculated timeline started to crumble. I knew Jennifer well enough to understand that frustration would expose her. And it did. Word reached me from Diane that Jennifer had spent hours on the phone with bankers, her voice rising, her charm slipping. When she slammed the phone down, Luke had rushed in, asking what was wrong, only for her to snap that his mother's estate was a mess. But the true unraveling began when I added another layer, ghosts from the past. One morning, Charles slipped a small item into the mansion's sitting room, the silk scarf I had been wearing the night of my supposed drowning. It was neatly folded on a chair, no explanation, no note. When Jennifer saw it, her face went white. Luke thought it had simply been misplaced, but Jennifer's hands trembled as she shoved it into a drawer. A few days later, Diane spritzed my favorite perfume in the hallway before leaving for the evening. The familiar scent lingered through the night, and when Jennifer walked by, she froze. "Do you smell that?" she demanded. Luke laughed, teasing her that she was imagining things. But she wasn't laughing. She paced the hall, her eyes darting like she expected me to step out from the shadows. The final stroke was an unsigned note, placed carefully on the edge of Jennifer's vanity by Charles. It read only 4 words, "You can't hide forever." Luke found it first and thought it was some kind of prank, but Jennifer's reaction betrayed her. She clutched the paper, her knuckles white, her voice shaking as she insisted it was just cruel. But Luke noticed her fear. Each day, Jennifer grew more brittle, her perfect facade cracking like glass under pressure. She raised her voice at the staff, scolded Luke for small things, and even accused him of siding with ghosts when he asked simple questions. The woman who once played the sweet, supportive wife now revealed flashes of the controlling, greedy person she truly was. Luke began to notice. He started to watch her differently, confusion clouding his eyes as he pieced together her erratic behavior. "She's just stressed," he told himself out loud, but doubt had taken root. From the shadows, I knew the trap was working. Jennifer believed she had erased me, but now she was haunted by every reminder I allowed to slip into her perfect little world. Fear was peeling away her mask, and soon even Luke would no longer be able to deny the truth. Jennifer's breaking point came one quiet morning. The sun was barely up when she entered the bedroom, only to stop dead in her tracks. Sitting on her bedside table was a small velvet box, and inside it, glinting in the pale light, was the ring I had worn the night of my drowning. The same sapphire piece Luke had helped his father choose for me years ago. It had vanished into the ocean with me, yet here it was polished, untouched, impossible to explain. Her scream jolted Luke awake. "She's alive!" Jennifer shouted, clutching the ring with shaking hand. "She's not gone, Luke. She's haunting me." Luke sat up, bewildered. "Jennifer, what are you talking about? That's ridiculous. How could that ring even be here?" But Jennifer was beyond reason. She paced the room, muttering, her eyes darting as though I might appear from the shadows. "She's here. She's watching me. She knows what I did." She stopped abruptly, realizing her words had slipped too far. Luke frowned, his confusion deepening. "What you did?" "Jennifer, you're not making sense. This isn't like you." For the first time, doubt cracked through his loyalty. He tried to comfort her, but his gaze lingered on her trembling hands and wild expression. Something inside him whispered that his wife was hiding more than fear. Meanwhile, I waited patiently for the next step of my plan. Through Charles, I arranged for Luke to overhear what Jennifer tried so hard to bury. That evening, as she made a hushed phone call in her study, Luke stood just outside the door. Her voice was sharp, stripped of all sweetness. "No, I pushed her. I shoved her overboard myself. Don't you understand? She was supposed to be gone forever." Luke's heart stopped. His face drained of color as he pressed his hand against the wall, listening in horror. Jennifer's words spilled out, frantic and unguarded. "And now she's tormenting me. The ring, the notes, it has to be her. How is that possible unless she survived?" Silence filled the hallway, broken only by the sound of Luke's unsteady breathing. In that moment, the foundation of his world cracked apart. His mother's warnings, the lawyer's concerns, even the strange things happening around the estate, they all suddenly made sense. Jennifer's perfect mask, the one she had worn so carefully, was gone. What Luke heard was the truth. His wife had tried to murder his mother for money. When Jennifer ended the call and stormed out of the study, she found Luke standing there, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Tell me you didn't mean that," he said quietly, his voice shaking. But she couldn't. The silence that followed was louder than any denial. For the first time, Luke truly saw her, not as the loving wife he thought he had married, but as the woman who had nearly destroyed his family. And for the first time, he understood that his mother had been right all along. The night of Jennifer's grand celebration was one she had planned down to the smallest detail. She called it a family dinner, but in truth, it was her coronation, the moment she would officially claim her role as the new lady of the estate. The mansion gleamed with fresh decorations she had chosen, the dining table set with gold-rimmed china and towering crystal glasses. She wore a dazzling red gown, her smile wide as she welcomed the guests, her hand tightly gripping Luke's arm. Luke looked tired, his eyes shadowed, his movements stiff. He said little, though Jennifer laughed and carried the conversation as though nothing were wrong. I watched from the doorway, waiting for the perfect moment. Then, as the room filled with the clinking of glasses and polite chatter, I stepped inside. My heels clicked softly against the polished floor, and the sound was enough to silence everything. Conversations froze. Forks clattered against plates. One by one, every head turned. I walked slowly, deliberately, every inch of me calm and composed. My hair was neatly styled, my gown elegant, my posture unshaken. I was not the drowned woman Jennifer had tried to erase. I was alive, and stronger than ever. The first to react was Luke. His face drained of color, his eyes widening in disbelief. "Mother," he whispered, his voice trembling. He pushed back from the table, unable to move closer, torn between joy and horror. Jennifer, on the other hand, nearly collapsed. Her glass slipped from her hand and shattered against the floor, wine spreading like blood across the rug. She stared at me as though I were a ghost risen from the sea. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Her carefully built world was crumbling before her eyes. I reached the head of the table and laid a folder onto the polished wood. "No ghost, Jennifer," I said evenly. "Just the woman you tried to kill." Gasps rippled through the room. Jennifer shook her head wildly, stumbling back as though distance could erase me. But I opened the folder and spread the evidence across the table. Bank records showing transfers to offshore accounts. Signed testimonies from staff who had witnessed her cruelty. Even recordings of her late-night breakdowns, her own voice admitting to the crime. "This," I said firmly, "is who you are. A liar, a thief, and an attempted murderer." Jennifer's mask shattered. Her voice rose into a scream, shrill and desperate. "No, this is a setup. She's lying, she's framing me." She lunged forward, her hands slamming onto the table, eyes blazing. When Luke reached to steady her, she shoved him aside, her composure fully gone. Then, like an animal cornered, she snapped. "You should have stayed dead," she screamed at me, her body shaking as she lashed out. The guests shrank back, the room in chaos. But I did not flinch. I stood tall, letting her rage prove everything I had just revealed. The time for hiding was over. The truth was laid bare, and Jennifer's downfall had begun. The mansion that had once echoed with Jennifer's laughter was now filled with the heavy tread of law enforcement boots. Officers moved swiftly, their voices clipped and professional, as Jennifer sat in the center of the grand foyer, wrists bound in cold steel. Her once perfect hair was disheveled, her dress wrinkled from her violent attempts to resist. "Jennifer Collins," the lead detective announced, his tone final. "You are under arrest for attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy." Her eyes darted wildly around the room, searching for an ally, for someone to stand between her and the truth now crushing her. But the guests from the dinner, once charmed by her smiles, now stared in horror. Even Luke kept his distance, his face pale, his jaw trembling. For the first time, Jennifer understood. She had no power left. As the officers escorted her out, she thrashed and screamed, "This isn't over. You'll regret this, Claire." But her words rang hollow, her voice drowned by the sound of the doors closing behind her. Silence followed, a silence heavier than any storm. Luke remained rooted to the floor, his eyes locked on me. His lips parted, but no words came at first. Finally broken, he whispered, "I didn't see it. I defended her. I let her." His voice cracked. "I failed you, Mother." I walked closer, my steps slow, deliberate. He looked like a child again, the boy I had raised alone after his father's death, the boy I had once sworn to protect no matter what. Despite the bitterness burning inside me, my hand reached for his shoulder. "You're still my son," I told him softly, my voice carrying both strength and sorrow. "But love made you blind. You wanted to believe in her so badly, you couldn't see the truth standing in front of you." Tears filled his eyes, his head bowing in shame. He had lost a wife, a false love, and nearly his mother all in the same breath. Yet I would not let grief consume him. This betrayal was Jennifer's doing, not his alone. The following days moved quickly. Lawyers reversed the fraudulent transfers. My estate reclaimed before Jennifer could scatter it to the wind. Margaret, my steadfast friend, ensured every legal thread was tied, every loophole closed. My loyal staff, Charles, Diane, and those who had stood silently by my side, were rewarded generously. For their loyalty, they received not just financial security, but my unwavering trust. The mansion slowly returned to what it had been, a place of honor, legacy, and resilience. Jennifer's gaudy touches were stripped away, replaced by the timeless elegance my family name deserved. One evening, as I sat by the window, watching the ocean's endless waves roll against the shore, I let the weight of it all settle. The sea had tried to claim me, just as Jennifer had wished. But the ocean had spared me, and in that mercy, I found my revenge. They thought they could bury me in the ocean, I whispered to the night, my reflection cold in the glass. A thin smile touched my lips. But I came back, and I buried them instead. Do you believe Jennifer got exactly what she deserved? Or do you think Claire should have chosen a different path for justice? Share your thoughts with me in the comments. I'm curious to hear your perspective. And if you enjoy powerful stories like this one, make sure to hit subscribe and tap the notification bell so you'll always catch the next chapter.